7. Crouched behind the others, Cal's breathing quickened as he watched Shay dispatch 2 guards without making a sound. Their bodies, wreathed in shadow, hit the ground with a muffled thump. It was difficult for him to tear his eyes away. Without so much as batting a pretty eyelid, Shay wiped her daggers clean on one of the guards' lapels and stowed them. Cal pulled on the straps that held the prefect armor in place, the metal digging into his shoulders. There hadn't been time to adjust them before coming here, and the heat radiating from the smelt mines didn't help. It amazed him how little attention the miners had paid to them as they passed through the igneous smelt mines. Most had refused to make eye contact or even look their way. Either patrolling prefects was a common sight or a common source of anxiety. Cal didn't know, but he could guess. Shay returned to the group and whispered something to Jaren. Cal was too far behind to hear what she said, but she shot him a look as soon as she was finished. Grunting, Jaren handed Shay what looked like a flat black box, then beckoned for Jord and Artie to follow him. Shay crept toward Cal and batted away his fidgeting hands and tightened one of the straps he'd been playing with. It helped a little, but the armor still felt wrong. Jaren and Jord looked like they were made for it, or it was made for them. Either way, it suited them, but not Cal. You know, you don't look half bad in uniform, Shay said, her smirk widening as she patted the strap. Cal grunted a noncommittal, thanks, and shuffled to the other side of her, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. What? Not used to pretty girls giving you compliments? Cal didn't answer. The dark and broody thing will only get you so far. Shay leaned closer, too close, her scent wafting again. Different this time. Floral. Eventually, you have to respond. I just want to focus, Cal uttered, not looking at her. He could feel her gaze on him, the same flippant gaze that showed everyone just how little she cared. Once we're inside, we split into 2 teams, right? That's correct. Artemis will be counting on you to deal with any threats along the way. Yeah, well, if everyone does their job, it won't come to that, right? Seriously, Cal, you're adorable. Did she have to be that close? Cal pushed Shay back, creating a little distance between them. Let's just get this over with. Fine, have it your way. Shay pouted, not taking her gaze off Cal. She took Cal's arm and placed a black box in his hand. Upon closer inspection, he could see 5 small holes on one side. It was slick and cold. Not stone, not metal. Smelt, maybe? What's this? Shay stared at him as if he'd asked a stupid question. Not the first she'd done that, and something told Cal it wouldn't be the last. It's a vox. A vox? I don't know what that is, Cal said, feeling more than a little stupid. It'll help us stay in contact throughout the Citadel. Really? Cal said, amazement overriding his stupidity. How does it work? He turned the box over in his hand, not sure what he was looking for. He'd never seen anything like this before. Never been far away from anyone to need one. Oh, so now you're interested. So much for, I just want to focus, Shay said, imitating Cal's voice. Cal shot her as a look as dangerous as he could give her. He clenched his jaw, hardening his resolve. He refused to be swayed by her games again. He'd told Shay he agreed with her plan, but he wasn't about to let her get anywhere near Ovette. Shay giggled at his expression, not fazed in the least. Come on, killer, she said, as she began to step forward. The name stung, a sharp reminder of what he'd done. He swallowed the guilt, pushing the sting down deep. There would be a time to deal with it later. if there was a later. Jaren and the others waited at the entrance to the citadel. Jaren eyed Cal and Shay as they crept forward. Even within the confines of the volcano, the entrance to the citadel towered above them. The walls were gray, mottled with black specks. Thousands of them. Cal ran his hand along the wall. The surface was smooth and unnaturally cold. Nice to see you two are done flirting, Jaren growled, aiming the comment more toward Shay than to Cal. Sorry, Jaren. Won't happen again, Shay replied, her tone light as she flashed Jaren a grin. Damn right it won't. From here on out, you both do what I say when I say it. Are we clear on that? Again, Cal could swear the comment was more for Shay, but this time she didn't respond. She winked at Cal and waited for Jaren to continue. Jord, Shay, you're with me. Artemis, take the Hollowborn with you to the control room. You're on controls. He's on guard duty. Got it, squeaked Artie, his cheeks reddening at the crackle in his voice. Not that Jaren noticed. Take care of whatever security measures they have in place along the way to the chain room, and make sure you don't forget to kill the lights. We'll need the cover. I know what I need to do, Artie replied, his posture stiffening as he tried to look more confident. All right, let's do this. For Eudos. For the rebellion. See you on the other side, handsome, Shay said, giving Cal one last wink. The halls of the citadel mirrored the outside, the walls a dull, oppressive gray that stretched on, broken only by sharp corners. Glass tubes filled with gift lit the corridors with bright light, the substance thick and unnatural. The air was a cool reprieve from the blazing heat outside, but a tingle crept further down Cal's spine with each breath. They were unwelcome here. Artemis, Cal, control room is that way. Jaren knelt beside the corner wall, gesturing in the opposite direction. Go. No noise. On it, Artie chimed, setting off without hesitation. Cal followed, taking one last look behind him. Shay offered a wink before disappearing around another corner with Jaren and Jord. Artie took corners with confidence, and it didn't take him long to find the control room door. It emanated the same coldness as the rest of the citadel. No visible handle, no seams of any kind, just a bulwark of blackened metal set into gray walls. Artie ran his hand along the metal, searching for something. He stopped near the center of the door, and a familiar green hue limed his hand. The inner workings of the door began to churn, the grinding echoing throughout the corridor. Artie breathed hard as he worked, and finally the door gave and the metal split apart, revealing an enormous open space. Catwalks crisscrossed above a lake of molten slag, all converging on a central platform. To the sides, thick pipes glowing with an orange hue snaked and coiled around each other, exiting the room at different points. Cal wiped the sweat from his forehead, the coolness of the corridors absent here. Artie, unfazed, made straight for the central platform, running along the catwalk without a second's hesitation. Cal took a step forward, expecting the metal rung of the catwalk to be hot as he gripped the railing for balance. The heights buffeted him with a wave of dizziness and nausea. Forcing himself to look ahead, Cal took a step forward, and then another. If Artie could do this, then he could too. At the control panel, Artie's fingers danced across a hodgepodge of flashing lights, miniature levers, and beeping gauges. His brand continued to glow, and every now and then a button out of reach clicked as if pushed by a spectral finger. I hope you know what you're doing, Cal said, not sure where or what he was supposed to be looking at. Please, Artie responded, utterly in his element. What are you doing exactly? I'm enabling remote functionality to several security measures and disabling anything that could be considered an impediment to our companion's progress throughout this facility, Artie said, emotionless and matter of fact. Um, oh, right. Sorry, he chuckled. I am opening the doors and turning off the Citadel wide alarm systems. Won't that look suspicious? Cal asked, taking a step back. Not at all. Systems such as these often require several rounds of maintenance to ensure they run in peak condition. Our presence here will go unnoticed, at least system wise. It shall. You said remote function. Whatever. How will that work? I have little time to engage in the dynamics of gift born control methods. However, the simple version would be that I can control it using my gift. Right. That sounds good, Cal said, feeling sheepish. Doesn't it? Artie chimed, pleased with himself. Several tense minutes dragged by before voices echoed from the other side of a nearby door. It hissed open, and a pair of prefects, deep in mid discussion, stepped through. Artie, we've got company, Cal whispered, not taking his eyes off the approaching guards. Artie didn't pause, instead, continuing his barrage of button mashing. I'm doing my job. Time for you to do yours. Kill them? I I don't think I can do that. Cal's voice was strained, coming close to breaking his whisper. Whatever you consider necessary, Artie replied. Cal checked the dagger at his belt, shrugged against a sword strapped to his back, and made himself look as inconspicuous as he could. After all, a good thief needed to know how to blend into his environment. Cal wasn't about to rob these idiots, but he figured the same principle applied. His chest tightened at the thought of killing again, at the image of the dead prefect's stare flashing in his mind. He swallowed hard, nausea surging as the guards drew closer. He locked eyes with one of the guards as they approached. The guard offered a curt nod when he passed. Cal nodded back and then turned back to Artie, willing them to keep walking. Wait a second. A gruff voice from behind him called. The timbre of his voice made him sound old and tired. You look familiar. What regiment are you from? Regiment? Cal stuttered, feeling exposed. The guard walked up and removed his helmet, revealing a face lined by experience, his dark stubble lanced with white. I swear I've seen you somewhere before. The second guard, red hair poking out of the sides and back of her helmet, chuckled. He's likely one of the new recruits they brought in yesterday. You know, the folk from Undine. Look at him. He barely fits into his armor. How old are you, kid? 18? Cal replied. 18? Ignis breath. You're barely off your mother's teat. What are you doing joining the prefects? Family to feed, Cal continued, his throat growing drier by the second. Don't we all? The woman said, replacing her helmet and shoving her partner in the arm. Come on, leave the baby to his first assignment. Let's hit the mess hall. The older guard eyed Cal for a second longer, looking like he wanted to say something. The tightness in Cal's chest sank as the prefect, with a grunt, followed his partner through the doors Cal and Artie had entered through. Cal took a few deep breaths before returning to Artie. That was close, he said, more to himself. Yes. I am pleased they did not interrupt our work. Your performance was adequate. Tell me, have you always possessed performative talents? Uh, I guess. Kinda had to pretend a lot growing up. Pretend what? Well, that I wasn't me for a start. An orphan? Artie asked, still deep in his work. A hollowborn, Cal replied, peering over the railing into the fiery chasm below. Ah. The clack of pushed buttons paused. And this gifted, Ovette, she's an orphan too? Yeah, we grew up together. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. Because of her capture? No, that's not really what I meant. It doesn't matter. Are you nearly finished? Cal replied, pushing himself off the railing and gesturing toward the control panel. The Vox crackled to life before Artie could respond. Shay's voice came through, distant and empty. Cal, Artie, you there? Cal unhooked the Vox and held it up in front of him, unsure what he should do next. Artie cleared his throat and gestured how to use the device. Cal brought his lips toward the 5 small holes. Yes, yes, we're here. Great. We had a small run in with a patrol, but it was nothing we couldn't handle. Cal looked down at the Vox as Shay spoke and over to Artie, who offered him a thumbs up and a wide grin. Tell Artie we're in position. As soon as he cuts the power, we'll make our move. Artie pottered over to the control panel and rotated a small valve. The lights dimmed, and the distant groan of the volcano subsided. Great work, Shay's voice whispered. Jaren, Jord, on my. With a flash, the lights reignited. A klaxon alarm blared, the volcano roaring back to life. Cal jerked his head toward Artie, his face stern as his fingers flew across the control panel. Artie, what's happening? Cal asked, his muscles flooding with nervous energy. I don't know, Artie stammered. I don't know. Cal pressed down hard on the Vox, the cold metal feeling hotter than it had a few moments before. Shay, Shay, can you hear me? Something has gone wrong. Shay! No answer. Cal stared at the Vox, his mind racing with half-formed ideas of what to do next. Cal, you need to get to the chain room. Oved is in danger, Artie said, his attention now directed toward Cal. What? Did you know Shay would target her if things went wrong? It doesn't take a genius to figure it out. If the primary target cannot be eliminated, then eliminating his most valuable resource would, at the very least, deter any immediate repercussions. Why bring me along if that was the plan? How did you all think I would react? Cal clenched and unclenched his sweaty palms, his throat burning with restrained anger. Follow the corridor we came through back to the junction, Artie said, gesturing pathways with straightened hands. She mentioned a skirmish between her party and some unknown individuals, presumably prefects. Their remains should lead you in the direction you need to go. Why help me? Cal seethed. The way I see it, you have 2 options. Stay here and listen to why targeting the gifted makes strategic sense, or go and save your friend. Cal spun on his heel, allowing the burn in his throat to wash over him. No one was going to take Ovette from him a second time. No one. Cal's sprint echoed through the uniform gray corridors. The weight of his sword dug into his back, and his loose armor bounced against his chest. He didn't care. There wasn't time to think, only to run faster. He rounded a corner to the sight of 6 dead prefects. Their bodies bore a mix of large gashes, scorched skin, and dagger-sized holes. He was on the right track. From behind him, a familiar female voice called out, Hey, rookie, hold up! Cal turned, ice flooding his veins. The same 2 prefects from the control room, now accompanied by others, jogged toward him. The red-haired prefect removed her helmet, allowing her bundled hair to fall once again. Where you off to? Huh? You're missing all the action, she said, jabbing him in the stomach with her elbow. Looks like baby's first assignment won't be so dull after all. Behind her, one of the other prefects tore off his helmet, pointing an accusing finger at Cal. It's you! You're supposed to be dead! What are you bleeding on about? The redhead replied, as the older, tired-looking prefect slowly drew his sword, recognition glinting through the slit in his helmet. The kid from the orphanage! Mycon's killer! It's him! There was a slight pause before the prefects exploded into action. The redhead and her tired-looking comrade dropped into precise military combat stance, while Cal fumbled with his sword. Behind him, the outstretched palms of the other prefects glowed red, blue, and green. Cal stepped back, unsure of whom to target. He tilted the tip of his blade between them, noting how much lighter it felt. The nicked edges remained, but the sword felt like it belonged to him. The leather grip tighter somehow. Familiar. The block of prefects advanced, each step precise and intentional. In a flash, the redhead dropped low and swung at Cal's feet. Surprising himself, he deflected the blow with the flat of his blade, unbalancing her. As he readied to kick to her face, a bolt of fire collided with his armor, the flames licking at his exposed neck and searing his skin. The redhead stood, and another prefect sent a bolt of blue ice at Cal. In a panic, he raised his sword, shielding his face. The icy bolt careened off the blade, exploding into glass-like shards against the wall beside him. Cal stared at his sword in amazement, remnants of the gift disappearing as if being sucked into the blade. With renewed confidence, he brought his sword to bear, ready for the next strike. Before anyone could move, a door slammed shut, inches from the tip of Cal's sword. "You're welcome," Artie's voice crackled through the Vox. It took Cal a moment to process what had happened, and another to realize he was wasting time. Cal skidded to a halt as he entered the chain room. At the far end, Ignis' chain, or at least a section of it, speared the floor and ceiling of the room, its runes throbbing with an intense, angry glow. The volcano's heart bathed the links in angry reds and oranges. Ovette knelt at the base of the chain, a smaller, ethereal chain snaking its way around her body, connecting her to the larger one. She screamed in pain as the chain jerked. Her body convulsed as if being crushed. "Ovette!" Cal screamed. "Cal, we need you!" Shay shouted, rasping for breath. Her voice was strained with effort. The clash of blades drew Cal's attention to Shay and Jaren locked in a desperate fight with the Lord Inquisitor. Shay looked exhausted, her face drenched in sweat. Jaren didn't look much better. His face and arms were covered in small cuts, a new one forming with each failed deflection. Jord lay a few feet away from them both, cradling a bloody gash at his side. "Hollow, get here now!" Jaren cried, barely parrying the Lord Inquisitor's blade to the side, and then missing with his counter swing. Cal struggled to follow the speed of the Lord Inquisitor. His blade was an onyx blur as he slashed and struck with inhuman speed. He looked to be around the same age as Leif, but moved as if he were a much younger man. "Ah!" Ovette cried out in pain once more, her arms constricted at her side. The ethereal chain pulsed in concert with the runes on Ignis' chain. Faint white light passed through it each time Ovette cried out. Cal's limbs surged with energy, any fatigue vanishing. The sensation was familiar, the nervous energy before a fight. But this time it was different. Potent. It fueled his movement, propelled him forward as he rushed toward Ovette. "Ovette, I'm here," he said, eyes darting over her. Pain jolted through his arm as he grabbed the ethereal chain, a searing agony that felt like fire coursing through his veins. The chain pulsed with malevolent energy, its hatred palpable, directed, as if it were an attack directed at him. Ovette screamed again, her eyes shut tight against the pain. Whatever was hurting him was hurting her. His Ovette. He couldn't waste another second. He gripped the chain as tight as he could. Something connected with him. something hateful and angry. It wanted him dead. Cal screamed in pain, his blood feeling as though it had been set ablaze. He would get lost in the pain if he didn't do something, if he didn't fight back. With a roar that tore at his throat, he pulled the chain taut, raised his sword, and cut through the ethereal chain, severing the link. Ovette crumpled to the floor as the chain around her dissipated, but Cal remained rooted to the spot. What remained of the ethereal chain wrapped itself around his forearm. It seared through his bracer, dissolving the metal. Cal screamed again as the chain reached his skin, his flesh searing and bubbling. The pain brought him to his knees, his mind awash with anguish, hate, suffering. He struggled to keep focus. In the chaos, a voice boomed with a timbre that rattled his sanity. It spoke in a language he didn't recognize, but the intention was clear. It saw him. It felt him. It knew who he was. And it hated him. It was going to kill him. No! Cal yelled, struggling to his feet. The pain remained, but he forced himself to focus. Digging his teeth into his lip, blood seeping into his mouth, he took a step toward Igni's chain, and then another. He raised his sword, tip pointed at the massive chain. The voice intensified, the sound echoing in his mind. It knew what he was about to do. Using the last of his strength, Cal charged toward the giant chain, sword held in front of him. The blade pierced the black, light-absorbing material, the runes flaring as he pushed with all his weight. The sword crawled deeper, cutting through the blackness. Cal pushed harder, crying out with effort. The sword sliced through the remainder of the chain, cutting the link in two. The voice in his head boomed one last time before fading just as quickly as it had arrived. The pain in his forearm subsided, leaving only soreness as the ethereal chain dissipated. Cal stood frozen for a moment, locked in a pose, the world quiet around him. The fighting of his companions muted. It started as a low hum, but grew into a deafening crescendo. The roar of the volcano. A shockwave of gift blasted into Cal, sending him and Ovette tumbling back. Shay and the others let out panicked cries as the room began to rumble, sections of the ceiling crashing down with incredible force. Ovette lay a few feet from Cal, her eyes closed, her breathing shallow. Cal tried to move, tried to crawl toward her, but his body refused to obey. He had nothing left. The distant sound of explosions, the rising quake beneath him, the crumbling of the room around him. He didn't care. He kept his eyes on Ovette for as long as he could. The edges of his vision darkened. The void crept in to take over. He was too exhausted to fight anymore. Too exhausted to care. Cal gave himself over to the encroaching darkness and allowed himself to slip away.